Welcome to the 2021 Governor's School East Virtual Gallery. It has been my great joy to work with this incredibly talented group of artists. Jumping into our summer, we began with community building. Students' first endeavor was to create a linoleum stamp, designed specifically to include the interests of a new friend in visual arts. After all stamps were carved with a balance of positive and negative space, students used their finished works to complete a bingo board and break the ice with as many artists as possible. With inspiration from artists Lorna Crane and Susan Faco, artists foraged for both organic and discarded materials around Meredith's beautiful campus to create handmade brushes. Once assembled, students used these new brushes and inks in groups of 3 or 4 to collaborate on larger scale pieces. Students communicated to find areas of shared interest while satisfying rules of composition and design in their work. Our first opportunity for integrating another area came in the form of summer cyanotypes. This project was sparked from conversations with natural science 2 summers ago. For our explorations, potassium ferrocyanide and ferric ammonium citrate were used safely to treat paper and cotton in a dimly lit studio. Students worked with 2 techniques: photograms, where students laid objects onto fabric or paper to capture silhouettes, and for the second technique, we worked together to adjust digital photographs, controlling the brightness, contrast, and inverting them finally in Photoshop, so they served as photo negatives to expose. Artists thoughtfully tested exposure times in sunlight, seeking to find the perfect Prussian blue. We were next inspired by the words and work of contemporary artist Nick Cave, specifically his figurative sculptures called sound suits. Students had the time to investigate where they found themselves personally vulnerable during ideation. Artak Brooke recently graduated from NC State, studying textiles and sustainability in fashion, and graciously shared her work to the students while encouraging fabric manipulation. Our artists worked with French friends in our final opportunity for cross-pollination among areas. With a field trip over to the Kate Center on campus, art and French students supported each other in the creation of tunnel, concertina, or squash books, while being challenged to freeze a moment in time. This moment of significance represented a special place, a memory, or a dream. And now, without further delay, let's hear from each of our artists.
Hi, my name is Zoya, and I'm going to be presenting to you the pieces I've created here at Gov School. The first piece is a 3D headpiece, so it's about breaking down mental barriers to pursue what you love. Some of the hardest things to strip away and break down are mental suits of armor, so this headpiece is just an example of one, symbolizing how you can make your dreams a reality while ignoring external measures of success and opinions of others. So the brightly colored fabrics making up this piece are just your ambitions and dreams, and the black cloths draped around them are inner voices and doubts, and there are roses sitting on top of the black cloths representing how you can overcome your mental obstacles and continue to blossom through doubts and critical voices. The next piece is my tunnel book. I call it Diagon Alley because since I've been young, Harry Potter has always been a really big part of my childhood. No matter where I am, the magic from the books has always brought my surroundings to life, and I wanted to turn that around and bring some of the magic to the real world through this tunnel book. The final pieces are my cyanotypes, and I took these photos when I traveled to Portugal 2 years ago, and while I was there, one of the things that really struck me was the beautiful architecture in each city that I visited. I spent a lot of time sitting in cafes or on sidewalks, just taking pictures and sketching buildings and alleyways, and I really noticed the gilded archways and intricate stone carvings, so I wanted to use gold leaf to amplify those aspects, and I also went over part of the photos with ink for an illustrative effect.
Hello everyone, my name is Manasi Chaudhary and these are the pieces I made for our cornerstone. The first set of pieces are cyanotypes I created and added mixed media to. The first two are of some past vacations, such as the image of a cathedral in Austria and a street in New York City. I wanted to expand on the meaning of the location by adding song lyrics that have resonated with me. I also used gold and white pens to add accents to the buildings or words in order to complement and not take away from the blue of the prints. The next piece is called A Beautiful Cage. This was a really interesting experiment for me, especially since I've never really worked with 3D art before. The intention behind this piece was to create a suit of armor that had the downfall of being painful if you get too close to the sharp edges. This intention was pretty evident when I was making the skirt, as I cut myself a few too many times with the aluminum. I really tried to keep the color palette simple to highlight the form of the skirt and the tiny details, like the foil leaves. Finally, the last piece is one of my favorite ones. This piece, titled Vermilion Sunrise, shows images I took of monuments on my last trip to India. I worked with watercolor only, even though I've never really liked using that medium. I was surprised with how easily the paint was able to create shading and dimension in the tiny details. Overall, my pieces over the course of the summer have really been a huge experiment for me. I'm more used to creating 2D pieces with graphite or paint, but branching out and trying different mediums was a great experience for me.
Hi everyone, my name is Deb and I present to you my cornerstone pieces. In each piece, I've taken parts of my identity to represent who I am, what I value, and what I struggle with. When I think of art, I like to define it as a form of communication or expression. So these pieces may make you feel exactly how I do, something different, or nothing at all. In my first piece titled I Am, I created a cyanotype that uses a cloth banner and a picture of myself. Over the picture are words written in white ink that feel I represent me. We are often our biggest critics, so it's important to remind ourselves of all the qualities, good or bad, that we possess. Maintaining a positive self-image that you believe in is no easy task. To make it easier, I put it in my artwork. My wearable sculpture, titled A Sound Mind, embodies the metaphorical and somewhat literal protection over one's mental headspace. While revealing, it is quite delicate as it protects what I fear is impacted the most apart from my mentality. I don't like to censor my work because if I don't censor anything in my life, such as the way I speak, then censoring through my art would serve as contradiction to my lifestyle and the way I communicate to others. My last piece is titled Mama, and it is a tunnel book. In my tunnel book, I incorporate aspects that represent the opposition of memory versus present. I dedicated this to the women in my family, but more specifically to my mother and my Gigi. When I was younger, I loved to watch the clouds in the sky, pointing out the figures I saw, or at least what I think I saw. As a little child, I had nothing in the world to be stressed about, so this activity seemed to bring me peace and still does. To conclude the series, I feel that I took a hold of the deeper meanings within these pieces. Many may not understand, so let me explain a little bit. In March of this year, I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety. It wasn't until I came here to truly release those feelings of internal struggle into my artwork. Furthermore, I am so grateful that I did, and I hope these pieces can show you that. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Erin Corwin, and I would like to share the artwork I've been working on at Governor School with you all. Starting with the two cyanotypes I did, titled Little Creatures and Rock Tower, I aimed to memorialize two moments that had stuck with me long past when I had experienced them. Rock Tower is a moment that memorializes a larger trip, as it is based on a photo I took during a 10-day vacation to Iceland, while Little Creatures comes from a photo I took during a quiet moment at a desk in a house my family rented. Making this was really exciting because I'd never done a cyanotype before. The next piece is a wearable sculpture titled Leif's Gauntlet. With this piece, I wanted to tackle the idea of emotional wounds and the armor people build around themselves as protection from similar experiences. I used the red section underneath the part of the chest that moves to represent the metaphorical wound, and I painted most of the rest of it silver to make it appear more similar to armor. Finally, I wanted to show how this armor can easily become a weapon, as one might try to protect themselves by pushing others away, and so I gave the hand of the piece pointed claws. This piece was fun to create, and I'm really happy about how it turned out, despite the fact that I almost didn't get it done in time. Familiar Spaces is my last piece, and it is a tunnel book that depicts the desk in my room where I do most of my artwork. I included lots of little details like an unfinished painting and a stack of puzzles underneath my desk to make it feel more like my actual bedroom. In order to truly capture the essence of this place, I focused less on complete accuracy and more on my memory and perception when painting this book. Thanks for listening.
My name is Kate DaSilva and these are my pieces. My first pieces are cyanotypes of Studley Castle in England. It specifically depicts the chapel at which Catherine Parr, one of Henry VIII's wife, is buried. I took these pictures when I traveled to England in 2019 with my family. I was struck by the intricate architecture and landscaping, as well as the story of Catherine Parr and how she outlived Henry VIII. For one of the pieces, I wanted to outline these features, so I drew over the detailed architecture and landscaping with a white gel pen. And for the other piece, I wanted to complement the intriguing architecture of the chapel by cutting up the pieces of the paper and slanting the composition. This allows for the eyes to follow both the movement of the architecture, but also the movement of the paper. My other piece is a tunnel book. It depicts a scene of the mountains, specifically the mountains in the town Boone. Boone is very special to me because it's a place of peace from the busyness of life. My family visits the NC Mountains every year, and it is a time to spend time with my family and disconnect. I chose watercolor for this piece because I wanted to reflect the peacefulness of the landscape, but also include the intricate details of the layers. Thank you to the support of my family, and thank you for listening.
Hi, my name is Ava DeCesaris. In my cyanotypes, I included my brothers Austin and Anthony, my dog Lollipop, and myself. In the beach scene, I embroidered swirls around Austin to create a sense of freeness that you feel when you're at the beach. Moving on to my sound suit, I used Christmas ornaments, clear plastic aprons, plastic cups, fishing wire, plastic vines and flowers, and an assortment of miscellaneous objects. Through the use of hot glue, spray paint, and sewing, I created a waterproof rain jacket to protect Mother Nature from the outside world. Simultaneously, I hung some vines around her neck because she works in unison with flora and fauna. I hung a plaque of human heads on her back to signify that Mother Nature is caring for humankind. I also took some pictures of my friends, Tucker and Amy, modeling my sound suit to show how it would look on a real person and how the suit can change depending on who's wearing it. Finally, every summer, me and my family go on a vacation to Maine. During this trip, it's a tradition to do the polar plunge. We wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning, go down to the docks, and jump into the freezing cold ocean water. I created this memory in my tunnel book because I've always been a little curious about what is swimming around me when I take the plunge.
Hello, my name is Elina Grooman, and today I have the pleasure of showing you some of what I've been working on for the past few weeks. My first two pieces are both in cyanotype, a medium I've never worked in before. Oath Utopian is a piece about choosing to persist in the face of unimaginable adversity, even if that persistence is only living well. It's inspired by one of my favorite books of all time, Too Like the Lightning by Ada Palmer. It is definitely worth the read. My second cyanotype piece is called Hike a Bike. It is an homage to everyone who has ever had the misfortune of riding through the sandy bit in the middle of the Holly Shelter game lands. I ended up painting over the center segment with Posca paint pens to create a blurred effect. This third piece is titled Act 1. It was based around a dream I had a few years ago that I just couldn't get out of my head. I made it by first cutting out the individual pieces of paper to create windows and then painting them to have similar coloring and lighting. I then lined them up together and voila, the strangest little theater in the world. Thank you so much for sticking around and supporting me on this journey. Enjoy the rest of the art.
Hello, my name is Cora Jones. I'm generally inspired by femininity, idealism, and just the process of decorating the mundane into works of art, whether it be a blank canvas or something more unconventional. I'm an artist because I like that transformation and romanticism, and I think the world could be so much more beautiful and artistic than we make it out to be. My peaceful moon is an example of this. Something as simple and routine as the night sky has so many intricacies, and I really wanted to capture my appreciation for that day-to-day magnificence when working in cyanotype. I also play on the concept of beauty as a lens of looking at the world in my wearable sculpture Vendella Rose. More literal incorporation of my perspective into my art is Looking Through, a piece about the feeling of depersonalization, as mental health is also a big inspiration of mine. A lot of my art is an intersection between my perspectives of beautification and mental illness, two subconscious inspirations I've had throughout my life that I only recognized and embraced relatively recently. I overall love incorporating aspects of myself and how I view the world into my work. I like to think this is evident in all my art in one way or another, but I think what's special about art is how the viewer's perspective is the most influential on a piece's meaning, despite the initial intentional meaning I may have put into it.
I had a lot of fun creating and experimenting, so I hope you approach looking at my pieces with the same excitement and curiosity I had making them. Thank you and enjoy.
Hello, my name is Max Marlow. The pieces you will see today include 2 cyanotypes, 1 cyanotype modification, 1 cardboard sculpture, and 2 India ink studies. The Bella pieces represent the juxtaposition between originality and one's personal take on a particular subject. To elaborate, I wanted to express how I see my dog Bella versus how she might appear to others. I used charcoal to create the overall subject and to highlight the subtle but key differences between the photo and the piece I created. Additionally, the angel oak piece is actually a cyanotype of a drawing that I completed at the beginning of my sophomore year of high school. I wanted to capture the drawing in a new light and composition. In terms of the cardboard mask, or the mask we create, I wanted to physically show the mask that we all create to shield our true emotions and intentions. I wanted to show how this mask constantly changes when induced to new situations and simulations. I strive to represent this process through the use of wire and cardboard. Consequently, this piece embodies the construction and modification of the mask and armor that people naturally create. Lastly, the purpose of the India ink studies was to see how I could bend and distort a figure while still maintaining identifiable features. Overall, this collection represents not only my time at Governor School, but ways in how I challenged myself throughout these 5 weeks.
Hi, my name's Jasper. I'm from the Pittsburgh countryside. Majority of my pieces in the art show are cyanotypes. They didn't really have an intentional theme, but a lot of them do focus on sustainability and traditional woodworking and such. Got a picture of my shop and a wooden bird that I made, as well as some of my goats. The piece I really focused on is the wearable sculpture, which project is inspired by Nick Cave, and I followed his process, at least for inspiration, pretty closely. I started with the piece of a back of a chair and just sort of looked at it, thought about it, figured out what felt right. And this project was interesting because I didn't plan it out logically, have an idea where I was going. I just trusted my gut and sort of built it by feel. That was a somewhat difficult process for me because normally I'm a really rational person. It's kind of hard for me to connect with my emotions or whatever. And something else that I thought about is Robert Bly's book, A Little Book on the Human Shadow, and how even though I didn't go into the piece with an intentional sort of clever meaning in mind, it probably says more about me the way that I did it. The piece is really a creation of my subconscious. You can take what you will from that.
Hi, this is Elena, and I'm here to give you the rundown of my art. For my first cyanotype piece, titled Downton Abbey Cats, I was inspired by my cats back at home because I miss them a lot, and I thought putting them in a cyanotype image would be very interesting, particularly seeing their details and textures represented in this medium. For my second cyanotype, Ludington, I was inspired by Ludington, Michigan, which is a place where some of my family lives and I go every summer. I created cyanotype of it and included a poem I wrote about it. Similarly, I was inspired by Ludington for my concerta book called Scenes from Ludington, which includes images of the car ferry, the North Breakwater Lighthouse, or as I called it when I was little, Big Shiny, and images of sunsets over the lake. On the front is a painting of Buttersville Beach, and on the back is the highway sign that directs you towards Ludington. Thank you for listening and checking out my artwork.
My name is Blair Newsome, and these are my pieces. The first 2 are cyanotypes. The girl's eyes are my best friends from back home. I decided to make a piece inspired by her and her kindness. The second is a collage cyanotype. I wanted to show what I've been feeling and seeing recently with COVID and everything that has been happening, constantly feeling the need to bring my attention to the world around me. At Governor School, especially in the beginning, I was often asked to describe myself and talk about myself and my characteristics that I value. I always try to search for the good, not necessarily closing my eyes, but choosing to search for deeper meanings in everyone and everything. So I created a pencil self-portrait expressing "See no evil." My last piece is a tunnel book. My dad and I love movies, and he said as a child his dad took him to the movies, but he passed away when I was young. After getting into governor school, I got a text from my dad saying my grandpa would be proud. This is a scene from one of my favorite movies that I can relate with. I included 2 mediums that I am fairly new to in order to feel uncomfortable with concepts like death. The scene in the movie quotes, "I see dead people." She said the answer is, "Every day. What did you ask?" The response was, do I make her proud? Thank you for your time and for your support through my artistic endeavors.
Hello, my name is Lola Page. I'm from Topsail, North Carolina. The pieces I created mainly focus on color and how color enhances the subject. From the wearable art to the cyanotype, whoever is at the center of the piece is meant to be highlighted in contrast by the vibrant hues surrounding them. The cape, titled Camouflage, includes every color in the rainbow across the wearer's back. The various people represented in the cyanotypes, from the religious figure to the girl on ice, are enveloped in deep blue, a white figure in the sea. The blue sky swallowing the white ice and the work likeness of Boone. It's an exercise in color, or the lack of it at its source, and how the eye is almost always drawn to negative space. I'd like to thank everybody who's given me this chance to be at governor's school, the people who have supported me and allowed me to continue on with this journey, and I look forward to advancing my art in the future.
Hi, my name is Lily Rowland, and I'm super excited to share with you all my work this summer. My first piece, Moments in Time, shows different photos from throughout my life, each with a different memory connected to it. I then added embroidery on top. I love adding in little details and various textures, so that's exactly what I did. Running the Clock is a wearable sculpture that was created and inspired solely off of the clock in the center. This piece represents the time that has felt lost after the pandemic. My last piece is called The Flower Shop. In an alternate reality, I would ideally own a flower shop in France and live across the street from it. I really wanted to create a sense of warmth and comfort as you look through the book. I loved all the various mediums and textures I've created throughout the summer. I hope you enjoyed seeing all my different pieces, and thank you for listening.
My name is Samsel. My pieces, Bluefield and Starry Ruins, are both cyanotypes. For Bluefield, I arranged the flowers and leaves I found outside and placed them on the treated paper and exposed it. I colored the result with colored pencil. And for Starry Ruins, I chose a picture from Greece I thought looked pretty. After treating it and exposing it, I used a white gel pen and dotted the sky to make it look like stars. For my wearable art project, Watch Your Act, I sort of used it to represent how I guard myself against how people perceive me. It's made out of cardboard and I painted it. For my concertina book, called Some Places in Europe, I picked from photos I took in Europe, such as Greece, France, Belgium, and Spain. And then I inked it, and that's it.
Hello, my name is Lulu Sasz, and I'm from Charlotte. Overall, for my pieces, I never really had a concrete plan, so as I created, I would randomly think of something and just go with it. This was especially the case with my wearable sculpture piece. With this one, I collected anything that gave me positive vibes and reminded me of my sister, like the paintbrushes because she loved to paint, and a mason jar lid because she used to put flowers in jars on her windowsill. My sister Sally was extremely creative, positive, and spontaneous, and I wanted this mask to be symbolic of seeing the world through her eyes, which is what I've always wanted to do. My tunnel book is extremely fun to make. Initially, I was nervous because I specialize in 3D sculpture and never really seriously drew or paint. But through many test strips, I found my style. This scene is from backpacking through the Oahe Canyons in Idaho. This is the place where I felt the most content, connected, and free in my life, and the people who I backpack with are so important to me. One cool detail of this piece is that I watercolored on maps to create the backpacks, canyons, and hills. I really love my cyanotype with my head sticking out of the bus window. I incorporated one of my favorite quotes, which somewhat encapsulates my outlook on life. We are not humans experiencing life, we are life experiencing human. I also love the cool stick cyanotype. With this piece, I found a cool stick, and I decided to mirror its form and movement with the paper. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nishaya, and I love to show you my cyanotypes. For the first cyanotype, I used scissors, an everyday object, and turned it into art. I placed the scissors and moved them for the effect in the result. For the other pieces, I was in Atlanta, and so for the first view, it was my first trip to Atlanta, and my view was the top of the building from the hotel across from us, and so I thought it was nice and snapped a pic. For my third cyanotype, I was at the High Museum of Art. I liked the piece House 3 by Roy Lichtenstein. I took a pic and edited it to have a 2D background that matches the house. For my armor piece, it was heavily inspired by Nick Cave. I wanted to use a bunch of buttons on a face piece. I glued pieces of fabric together onto a mesh wire to make the foundation. I glued down buttons onto it, and then added long strips from a Christmas bow to make the dangly bottom half. Then I spray painted it all black. For my tunnel book, it was inspired by my Aunt Linda and Grandma's house. I spent a lot of my childhood there, and even now I come over and spend time there. It was a place of significance in my life and built memories there as well. Thank you so much for listening, and hope you enjoyed.
In art this session, I really enjoyed the cyanotype and tunnel book individual projects. For my cyanotypes, I chose to use photographs of a chapel, my dad, and my friend for my photo negatives, and then altered the resulting cyanotype prints in different ways. For instance, I added white gel pen to the print of my dad to highlight the tree behind him, cut out the background of the chapel to make it see-through, and then added wings and more shading to the photo of my friend with colored pencil. So I really enjoyed modifying these photos in unique ways. For my tunnel book, though this is still a work in progress, the concept behind it is based in my life. Throughout my life, I've hated watching scary movies because when I close my eyes in an attempt to sleep at night, I see flashbacks to characters or scenes from those movies that stick with and haunt me. So I often go on my phone to distract myself. I made my tunnel book as a visual representation of what I feel like during those nights, and as a reminder to myself that the monsters that haunt me are separate from the reality of my bedroom. Thank you for listening.
I'm Elena.
And I'm Elena.
And we made a sound suit together. For the inside of the cloak, I sewed together 1,000,000 yellow and gold fabric pieces and a sort of patchwork quilt.
And for the outside of the cape, I sewed together 1,000,000 blue, green, and purple fabric pieces to create another sort of patchwork quilt.
To create the pattern of the wings on the back of the cape, we use cyanotype, a material you'll see in several other amazing artworks in this show.
This piece represents escapism into a more fantastical, magical world.
Thank you very much.
For this piece, we used scraps of fabric and buttons to create a piece of armor. We were inspired by the 70s hippie colors, fashion, as well as their theme of peace. We created a delicate armor that included free-flowing attributes to create a harmony of fashion, free spirit, and protection. Inspiration also beamed from the 70s culture and what it created, a more welcoming and open-eyed environment for not only fashion, but also new ideas.
A special thanks to our family, friends, and the GSE community for your support and affirmation of this amazing group of artists.